All right, this week's question of the week comes to me from one of my viewers on why do more experienced grapplers in jiu-jitsu sometimes have a difficult time adding more techniques to their arsenal as far as their A-game type moves. You know, when a lot of times they end up just doing the same moves again and again over the years, and the same attacks, same escapes, same defenses, and they're really proficient at it. So what's the difficulty in adding new stuff? And I thought it was a great question, and it goes back to really the psychology of learning and of change. I remember years ago somebody had told me that people only change when the pain of remaining the same is greater than the pain of making the change. That's when people change. Until then, they keep doing what they've always done, even if they don't have the best results necessarily. And an analogy I would give is, and somebody on one of my videos said, why you always got to give these analogies, tell these stories? Why don't you just get to the point? And I'm like, look, bro, I'm old. Look at me. I turned 57 in a couple months. I got gray hairs. I'm a retired Navy sailor after 33 years. That's what old people do. We tell our stories. That's what sailors do. We tell our stories. If you don't want any stories, you just want something exciting, and you watch some young dude, you know, on their channel. They'll show you something exciting. They'll get straight to the point. They might even go do a cool dance for you, maybe a Fortnite dance after they get their submission. Like, maybe that's for you. Here, you're going to get my stories and my analogies. That's what I do. So, my analogy for this, adding new techniques, even if the new technique might be better, and why it's a difficult change, is I was in the U.S. military for 33 years, and for years, on our rifles, we just shot with what's called iron sights. If you don't know what the iron sights are, just Google it. And then one day, the military said, hey, we're going to introduce some optics. And I think the first optic I ever got on my rifle was a Trijicon 3-power optic. And man, you could see the target even better. It's almost like putting reading glasses on when you get old. You could see the target even better. But almost all of us were resistant to that change. It was like, iron sights were great. Carlos Hathcock used iron sights. Iron sights is good enough for me. I've been shooting with iron sights forever. I'm great at it, or I'm really good at it. I don't need to change to know optics. Because there was a learning curve with changing to optics. And initially, when we shot at the range, we were more accurate with our iron sights than we were with the optics. And then after a few more rounds, maybe we was just as good with the optics as we were with the iron sights, but we was still like, hey, I like the iron sights better. I don't need these optics. And we had plenty of reasons why we thought the optics were inferior and we didn't need to make that change. Well, what was explained to me is I was asked the question, like, how many shots through a rifle have you made in your lifetime using iron sights? And this was probably like 20, 30 years ago. So I was like, well, I don't know, maybe 10, 20, 25, 30,000 rounds, I guess. You know, I've shot over a lifetime between, you know, hunting and being on the range and, you know, things like that. And the question was, well, how many shots have you made using the optic and the red dot? I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe a magazine, maybe 50, maybe 100 now. And it's like, well, that's why you're not seeing the significant difference between the iron sights and the optic, is you haven't used the optic and trained on the optic nearly as much as you have on the iron sights. So the iron sights is what you knew. You got thousands of rounds using the iron sights and only a few rounds using the optic. You need to use the optic more to evaluate whether the optic is going to give you an advantage over iron sights and whether it's a good change. And I can tell you nowadays in the military, there's almost every advanced military in the world is using optics instead of iron sights. And not only that, you look at most rifles owned by former military guys or even active duty military guys, and whether it's their hunting rifle or their home defense rifle, and 9 times out of 10 it's going to have an optic on it. But these were many of the same guys who were like, the optics, iron sights are just fine for me. They were fine for my dad, they was fine for my granddad and my great-great-granddad, and fine for me. Now we all realize optics are a great leap forward, and accuracy is greatly improved by using these optics. So, same principle of learning with jiu-jitsu. Let's say you've been doing the scissor sweep for years. Maybe you've drilled it 1,000 times. And then you come into class one day and the instructor teaches you a flower sweep. You do it the first couple times, you're like, I'm nowhere near as effective doing this flower sweep as I am with the scissor sweep. I like the scissor sweep. I'm good at it. And then maybe you're even open-minded enough after class, you try the flower sweep in a roll and it doesn't work, and then you go back to your scissor sweep and it does work, and it's like, see, this flower sweep is inferior to the scissor sweep. I need to just keep doing the scissor sweep, and then you just don't add the flower sweep to your game. The problem is you didn't give the flower sweep the appropriate amount of reps that you needed to give it in order to really evaluate whether it was better than the scissor sweep, whether it was as good as the scissor sweep, or whether it was truly inferior to the scissor sweep. And so that is just an example of one of many possible techniques that you could learn in jiu-jitsu, and the tendency is to go with the technique that you're best at, whether it's an escape, submission, sweep, guard pass. You go with what you're best at. And it's hard to implement something new because there's a learning curve. It's going to take a while before that you're as good at that new technique as you are at your previous favorite technique. And sometimes it's just a matter of not only you won't get rid of the scissor sweep, but you want to add the flower sweep to your arsenal. And if you rep the flower sweep enough, sometimes maybe you'll go for the scissor sweep, it's not working, and then you go for the flower sweep and it does work, or vice versa. And so the reason grapplers, jiu-jitsu practitioners have a hard time, the experienced ones, adding new techniques oftentimes is because they have what's tried and true, and there's a resistance to change. Because initially you see the new technique, it's like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. And then you rep it a few times, and then you try it, and you're like, I'm not nearly as good at this new technique as I am at the previous technique. I'm sticking with my previous favorite technique. When sometimes it's just a matter of trying it more to truly be able to evaluate whether the new technique is something that you can truly add to your game, or whether it is an inferior technique that doesn't need to be added. Or in some cases, you're going to find it's a better technique that can replace what you currently do and be more effective. So that's the answer to this week's question of the week. I appreciate y'all that stuck around for my story. If you like my story, make a comment below. Give me a thumbs up. If you don't like my stories, then give me 2 thumbs down. Don't just hit it once. Hit it twice. That way I know you're serious about it. Okay, that's my weekly dad joke. All right, till next week. Ciao.